Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a recommendation video. I've actually not done one of these before, so be nice. Everything in this video is my opinion because in my opinion these are underrated books. Specifically, these are underrated thriller/horror. There's definitely, I feel like, more, so I made a little list so I wouldn't forget. I definitely would say there's probably more thriller than horror on this list because I definitely don't read as much horror, but there are a few horror on here. And this is basically to start off your Halloween season. Like, none of these are going to like scare the crap out of you. None of these are like that. This is just kind of like to get you in the mood for Halloween, and which I'm always in the mood for. Like, Halloween starts September, ends November, because then Christmas. But because that's the only reason it ends is Christmas. I'm just like ready for Halloween. I'm ready. And a few of these I actually just read to get myself in a Halloween mood, because technically my Halloween apparently already started in August. But anyway, let's get started on this list. They're not in any type of order. It's just kind of like what I wrote down as I remembered, like what I enjoyed recently. I also went ahead and looked on Goodreads to see how underrated these really were. And underrated can mean not many people have read it, and it can mean people didn't really like it. So let's get started on that. My first recommendation is, in my opinion, a horror, but I'm already starting off hot. Some people think it's not really very horror, but in my opinion, it had me freaked out. It had me freaked out. I have a whole review on it if you want to watch it, but it is Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. This is a sci-fi horror that follows a misfit group of space explorers. They're not really called astronauts. This is in a world, this is like way in the future when there's tons of space exploration. You can go anywhere in space. You can live in space. But anyway, our space explorers are on their like final mission of their like 8-9 year long stint for their corporation. They know their corporation is evil as well. Everyone knows this corporation's evil. They hide things, and they come across on their final day a abandoned cruise ship that apparently went missing years ago, and everyone inside went missing. Everything went missing. No one knows anything that happened with this cruise ship. And so they come across it and they're thinking, payday. Payday. We don't have to go work for this corporation anymore. We're gonna go inside and find some proof that we found this thing, because it was like, think like Titanic. Like, there was very specific architecture design just for this ship that will only belong in this ship. So they're gonna go in, get proof that they found the ship, and basically like release it to the public so that the public's like, oh, they found it, they're heroes, and the corporation can't punish them. So they decide they want to go inside the abandoned cruise ship, and that's where things start to go wrong. My next recommendation is a thriller, and this one's interesting because I think it's underrated. I feel like when it came out, a lot of people liked it because it was a book of the month pick. So obviously it can't be that underrated, but it seemed like not a lot of people picked it, and it doesn't have too many ratings on Goodreads. And again, I don't hear that many people talk about it when they talk about like their favorite thrillers and like really good thrillers. So one of my favorite thrillers that I've ever read, like, I literally had other people read it. My husband read it, my best friend read it, and it is called The Night Swim by Megan Golden. Oh my gosh, I love this book. So this book follows two different storylines, as most thrillers do. One storyline is our current day, and she is a podcaster, which is really fun because you get snippets of like her podcast. My husband listened to an audiobook and he said the audiobook was really good. And she is currently looking at a case like in this town, and our past is talking about basically the case from the girl's point of view in the past. And it's just the way that it interweaves, and it just was so impactful. And it's about like female strength and just like it's just like a series of unfortunate events that happen, and it just like, it tugs at the heartstrings, but it also is just so good and thrilling. And this one was one of my favorite and most enjoyed book of the month that I've ever gotten. My next book is definitely an underrated read because, number one, not many people have read it. Number two, it's not rated very well, and it makes me so sad because it was one of my favorite books I've read in a thriller form in a while, and it is called Pretty as a Picture by Elizabeth Little. And it follows our main character, who is she's like a video editor kind of person. I don't know exactly what they're called. Videographer. She's some sort of editor on films. She is very, very good at what she does. So she is put on these big films, and she sits in her little room and she edits the film to look the way it does when you finally see it on the big screen. And she gets pulled into a new project on this little island, and the project is going to be like a fictionalized version of a murder that occurred on the island. And it's just, it's so good. It's so good. And it's also a pretty short book. I'm not sure why people don't like it. It has like a 3.6, I think, on Goodreads. I enjoyed it because I like any thriller or book or anything that has to do with movies or being on a movie set. I literally just bought a book called Runtime that everyone's been talking about that I'm really excited to read because it happens on a set. And anything that happens on a set, I enjoy so much. So I'm hoping more people read this because it really doesn't have that many ratings. Not many people have read it. So I'm wondering if just not enough people have read it for it to like be a higher rating, because sometimes that can happen. If a bunch of people with similar likes and dislikes read books, it can get bad ratings if they don't like it. But I will say the main character can be difficult to like. I personally liked her, but she does have a little bit of OCD, so she has a hard time talking to people, but it made her sweet to me. Like, she was so sweet, but she also had like difficulties talking to people, which made the plot interesting because all she wanted to do was sit in her little booth away from everybody and do her video stuff. But she gets dragged into it when somebody dies, and these two kids that live on the island, they want to be podcasters or YouTubers, and they want to solve the mystery and talk about the mystery, so they kind of drag her into it. So it's funny. It's really good. I really enjoyed that one, so I think you guys should give it a shot. Next horror on this list is a young adult horror, and it is called Small Favors by Erin A. Craig. I feel like her other book, House of Salt and Sorrow, which I really did enjoy, and it creeped me out, has gotten most of like the attention, but Small Favors is a really good book. It is a really good book, and it is freaky. Basically, we follow this girl who is living in, kind of think of The Village by M. Night Shyamalan. Very small town. Everyone's kind of in each other's business to the point where it's very much reminds me of like a Puritan society kind of thing going on. And no, the twist in The Village doesn't happen in this. I did not ruin the book. It does not happen in that. It is legitimately, yeah, I'm not gonna say anything else because I don't want to ruin The Village if you haven't watched it. Basically, her family takes care of bees, like they're beekeepers. And I want to say it's been a while since I read this, but something tragic happens and her dad has to leave to take care of business, and she has to stay home. She stays home to take care of the bees with her brother and stuff. And weird things start to happen. There was a group of strange people on the outskirts of their little village, because again, it's a little village surrounded by woods. And a group of people has come to the village, and coinciding with their arrival, very strange and dark things begin to happen, and basically tearing the town apart. So it's just this like, it's a very obscure abstract book, but it's like a descent into madness. Like, you watch this descent into madness and things happen, and it's just dark and creepy and uncomfortable, and it's really good. It's really, really good and unsettling. So if you want to read something, it is a little bit of a chunker for a book, but it's a standalone horror, and I highly recommend it. It was really fun to read, and it leaves you kind of feeling like, ooh, what did I just read? But it's really good. The next one on this book is another young adult horror. It could technically be classified as a thriller, but it is The Mary Shelley Club by Goldie Moldavsky, something like that. This one was fun. This one was a surprise for me. This is following a group of kids who kind of, not exactly outcasts, like some of them are outcasts, some of them aren't, but they've come together with the love of horror and pranking people and stuff. So it's a small group of these kids who don't talk in real life, but they come together to watch horror movies, and they have basically a rites, I don't know what you would call it, but every year you have to take you participate in pranking basically people. So each person gets to participate in the pranking, and one person wins and they get bragging rights, etc. Unfortunately this year, some of the pranks start to go horribly wrong when our main character joins, and it's just fun and it's eerie, and there's definitely some like really creepy moments, and this author does not pull punches. I was not expecting it to be as dark as it was, but it is dark. It's dark, it's fun, it's slashery. This is a perfect Halloween book. Like, if you don't want to read it now, I would definitely read it during Halloween, because it is dark. Like, it's definitely borderline horror thriller. There's definitely some moments that I would say it's a horror. I would say it's a slasher. It's fun. It's fun. I love how I'm saying it's fun that it's a slasher, but you know what I mean. If you're watching this, you know what I mean. The next book on this list is my Dearest Darkness. This is a surprise read for me. I picked this up because it was on sale, and I really liked the cover. Oh, and it is by Kayla Cottingham. I wrote down all these authors because I'm terrible with remembering authors. But it is, I feel like a lot of people have picked it up but haven't read it yet, and it's highly underrated. It is in a young adult horror, and I definitely would say horror, and it follows our main character who lived through a tragedy at the beginning of the book, and she gets admittance into this prestigious like liberal arts school that basically sets you up for your future. It's amazing, and it's in this like very secluded area surrounded by woods, etc. Due to this tragedy, she is connected to something dark on campus that she doesn't quite understand, and no one really understands. And also, along with her point of view, there's the point of view of another girl who is like this popular girl, and it's her and her group of friends that kind of get sucked into this darkness with the new girl. And it's just, that's all I want to say, because it's kind of an abstract book, and it's very dark and it's eerie, and this is another book that's kind of like Descent into Madness, and this is a book you should go into blind. I did, and just read it. It's fun. Standalone horror. Highly suggest this one. Okay, this next one is not for everybody. This one is called Breathless by Amy McCulloch. This was just the book of the month a few months ago, and it got majorly mixed reviews. I think this is a highly underrated book. I think this was one of the best book of the months I've read in a while, but I think you have to enjoy like mountaineering. Like, if you're into reading stuff about Everest, K2, all the alpinist stuff, if you are into mountaineering, you don't have to do it, you just have to enjoy reading about it, because I would never do that, then you should read this book. It is so much fun. It follows our main character, who is an inexperienced climber, and she basically gets roped into doing a story on a man who is 14 clean. He is basically climbing all 14 peaks that are over 1,000 meters, which is considered the death zone, but he's not doing it with any fixed lines, with any oxygen. He's not doing it with any help, which is like, oh my god, that's like impossible. But while she is climbing the mountain, deaths start occurring, things start happening, and it's just eerie. I loved this book because of atmosphere. It is slower than a lot of thrillers, but I love the characters, I love the atmosphere, and the author, this is the important thing you gotta know about this book. The author actually climbed the mountain. So I think the mountain in this one is like Manaslu, I don't know how to say it. And she legitimately climbed this mountain, which is amazing. And she decided to write this thriller using her knowledge about the mountain, which is why it's so good. And I feel like a lot of people miss that who didn't like it. Number one, either they just weren't into mountaineering. This is definitely mountaineering heavy, and it is a little slow. So if you like atmospheric thrillers that are eerie and you are interested even remotely in mountaineering, you should read this, because this author put like her everything into this, like you can tell. So I really enjoyed this. This was a 5-star for me. I had so much fun reading it, and yeah, it just solidified me never ever climbing mountains. So the next book is a very underrated book, and I didn't give it as high of a rating as other books, but it was still fun, and I think it deserves some like credit, and it's called Small Town Monsters by Diana Rodriguez Wallach. And this one is following our main character whose mom and dad are exorcists, and she starts noticing some strange things happening in town, especially surrounding this organization that is starting to seem like a cult. And our other person that we're following is a popular boy from school whose mom has joined this group and is starting to act very strange. And so they have to join together to try and root out the evil in the town. It's a very short book. It's really short. It's fun. I think this would be a really, really fun book to read in a readathon because it's very quick and it's about cults. And it's a good time. It's a good time. I like books about cults. But there's not like a ton of substance in this book. It's definitely like I would say it's a young adult horror. But again, it's fun. It's fun. I would save it for a readathon. Like if you're gonna do I was gonna say, I feel like there's a bunch of Halloween readathons that pop up around September, October. So I would save it and read it for one of those. And it's a good time. We're down to the last two books. The next book is a young adult thriller, and it is None Shall Sleep. This is a surprise book to me. It follows our main character who is a survivor of a serial killer, and our other character is the son of somebody who was killed by a serial killer. They have basically been hired by the FBI to do interviews of young serial killers because it's kind of like it's difficult to talk to young people. They don't want to talk to adults, etc. They're a whole different mindset than adult serial killers. And basically they get involved in a current case that is related to one of the previous cases. And so it's just fun. It's definitely young adult, but it borders on adult because I think the characters are like 18, 19. So it's like right on that border of slightly more adult, like language and stuff. But I would still classify it as young adult. But this one was fun. I enjoyed this much more than I thought I would. I picked it up kind of on a whim because number one, I don't like the cover, so I would have normally not picked it up. But I heard some good things about it. It had really good reviews, and I like the idea of, I like the FBI thing. Like, it's fun. Like, it reminds me of Criminal Minds. It's very Criminal Minds feeling and Mindhunter feeling. And I just really enjoyed this one, and I think if you want an FBI Mindhunter kind of book that's not too adult and grotesque and stuff, this is a good one. And the last book that I read, and the most recent one I believe that I read, is The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. This book had me freaked out. This is an adult horror book, and it's weird. It is weird and uncomfortable, and it was a lot. And I enjoyed it so much, but at the same, it had like moments of comedy, which I really appreciate in horror books, because if this book didn't have any type of comedy in it, I may have been throwing up, or I would have DNF'd it because it was so stressful. This book had one of my biggest fears, which is basically being lost somewhere. One of my biggest fears is going someplace and not being able to get back. Like, that is in this book, and it has me freaked out. Like, just thinking about it has me freaked out. And like unseen horrors, and it's weird. It is weird and so original and creepy, and if you want to feel absolutely creeped out and kind of grossed out at some points, because there's some body horror in this, I would definitely pick up The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher. And this book has stuck with me so much, and I definitely plan on picking up one of their other books. But it freaked out. So if you're a horror fan and you haven't read this one, I think you need to read it. That is my recommendations list. It's definitely more for beginners, I feel like. I feel like a lot of these books, they're not going to absolutely like ruin you. Like, they're just not gonna do that. They're really fun to read. I tried to keep this kind of light. Probably The Night Swim is like the most uncomfortable because of some of like the warnings in there for sexual assault and harassment and stuff like that. And it's just, it's a sad thriller, but it's also fantastic. So that's probably the darkest one on this. All the other ones are more like, just they're fun. They're a good time. They're a good time. They're all a good time. So I really enjoyed this list. Like, this is some of my favorite, again, what I consider underrated. I didn't want to just give you a list of Riley Sager books and, you know, everything that's been on Reese Witherspoon's list, like the guest list and all those. I didn't want to like repeat all those. I wanted to try to do something a little bit different, especially because I feel like a lot of authors don't get as much credit as I feel like they deserve. Writing a book is really hard, and I feel like it's sad when a lot of people don't read it. So hopefully you find something on this list that you guys really enjoy and find a new author maybe that you really like. So make sure to subscribe. I'm gonna try and do more recommendation videos. We'll see. And make sure to like this video and comment if you've read any of these books, what you thought about them, or if you're gonna pick up any based on this list. So that is my list, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.